Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 10 of the Rodeo Joe Show. I'm going to be covering Sunday's games that happened throughout Week 4 of the NFL. I'm also going to go over some injuries and issues that happened from yesterday. It was another big day of injuries. It just seems like it's just been a theme this year. A lot of good starting quarterbacks are going down. And it's kind of unfortunate. It kind of tarnishes the quality of the game a little bit, but you know that's the way the season goes. It's just the way the NFL is. And it was a great weekend of games, let me tell you. We had a lot of big upsets, and we also had a couple undefeated teams go down this weekend. But it just makes for great competitive football that way. I wouldn't want it any other way. But first things first, for those that don't know, I'll just say this real quick. I managed to publish the Monday night game first as a preview. It's kind of the way I think I might go about doing this, because sometimes these episodes can take a while to produce, and with including the Monday night game in, it kind of makes it that much longer. It takes that much longer to get there, and I've had at times where my preview is at the end of the video, and it basically doesn't get published until midway through the second quarter, sometimes at the earliest of a Monday night game, and I can't have that. That's just a disservice to you guys. So the only thing I can say about that is, that's just life. That's just, work, I wish I could do this full time and have it as a means of my income, but unfortunately at the moment I don't. So this is kind of how it's going to be. So hopefully, someday maybe it might be, and then you guys don't have to worry about that. You'll get your content pretty promptly. Like I said, nothing too drastic with the change. The days are going to stay the same. I'm just looking to just include that as the first thing I do, and record that, get it done, and get it out there. And as I state in that episode, it's a good way for, while you guys are waiting for this episode, you guys can listen to it, and maybe during slow portions of the game, and maybe in at halftime, you can tune into this episode and kind of get a head start on that if it's something you'd like to do. I know I would definitely appreciate it. But without further ado, I'll go into what happened yesterday. First things first, one of the big things that happened, especially given that this is a AFC North heavy channel. Those that have followed the AFC North know this name and know it very well. I don't even have to say the man's first name, but just for the sake of somewhat professionalism, I will. But Burfict, Vontaze Burfict, did a very Burfict move yesterday for the Oakland Raiders, and had a illegal helmet-to-helmet hit on a downed player, got ejected out of the game, and it has been reported by the NFL that he is suspended indefinitely. And apparently he's trying to file a grievance against the NFL, which he shouldn't win. There's no way he should win this. Quite frankly, I don't believe he should be in the league anymore. I think he's had more than enough chances to prove that he's not that kind of player. And he just keeps showing that he has no discipline. And this explains why the man was undrafted. He just has this issue. He's not what this game needs. He's definitely an eyesore to anybody that enjoys this game, that loves to watch this game, play this game. Kids that want to come up and become NFL players in the future of the league don't need to have a guy like this to look up to and follow and try to emulate. Best thing the league can do is suspend him indefinitely, permanently. That's my take on it, because I tried to give the guy the benefit of the doubt initially when he had this kind of target, if you will. Because prior to that, Ndamukong Suh was that kind of guy. And, I sort of defended him. He had a couple questionable plays that he had early in his career with Detroit where you're kind of like, that's not too bad. But then it was like, well, okay, that was pretty blatant. You stepped on the guy's groin or whatever, and that shouldn't be allowed. But with that being said, he's been given second chances, and he hasn't been in the headlines for anything dirty. And that's what happens. When you get a second chance, you're supposed to capitalize on it, and he has. And he's, he got a Super Bowl appearance, and he actually got to play against his former team yesterday, and he had a pretty good decision, or a pretty good play in that game that really dictated a lot of that game, which I'll get into later. But that's all I got to say about Burfict. He really doesn't even deserve the time that I've spent talking about him with this, because he's just, like I said, he's just bad for this league, and he's the kind of player like him doesn't need to be in this league and doesn't need to be paid. And I wish him the best in his personal life, because I don't want to wish hate on anybody, but I don't want to see him in this league. Quite frankly, he doesn't deserve to be in it. He's had plenty of opportunities. But now going into some injuries, Bradley Chubb tore his ACL, which is very unfortunate for Denver. I know they have high praise for that guy, and it's unfortunate, but he will miss the rest of the season. It's been reported. On the opening possession of the game with the Vikings and the Bears, Mitchell Trubisky landed hard on his shoulder. He got an MRI today, and it's been reported he has a dislocated left shoulder with a slight labrum tear. No surgery is required. He does plan on traveling to London, but they don't know when he'll play, but it's very unlikely that he'll play in that game. And Sam Darnold has actually been cleared to throw. He's okay to throw now for the Jets, so that's something good to look forward to. Bright spot for that team as well. Although his status for Week 5 is uncertain at this moment, but at least he's been cleared to get out there and throw and get to working, because that's what that team needs right now for sure. And so with that being said, let's just get right into these games. First game, we have the Titans and the Falcons. Titans were able to pull that off 24-10, move to 2-2 on the year. Atlanta 1-3. If Tennessee plays this kind of ball where Mariota doesn't do too much, and they're able to get a good balance running game going, their defense is good enough to win them some games. But in this game in particular, they led 24-7 at halftime and just dominated defensively. Mariota had 3 touchdowns early on, and he managed to not get sacked at all, which is something that I know Titans fans are really happy about. I believe he was the most sacked quarterback going into that game. So it's a good thing that they were able to keep him upright. And just Atlanta they just can't get it together. They went they missed 3 fourth down conversions. I believe they did get 1, but you just don't know what you're going to get. I see that team just regresses down week to week. I don't see much improvement out of that team. As far as Tennessee goes, like I said, they played a great game, but I think this is the kind of team you're going to get throughout the year. And what I mean by that is that they're not going to wow you in any way. They're going to win some games. They're going to drop some games. They're going to be floating right around the 8-8 kind of mark, I think. The past 3 seasons, that's how they've been. I think that's what they'll be. And if anybody in Tennessee wants to, see that change, I think they need change at quarterback, unfortunately. When he's good, he's good, and when he's bad, he's bad. And that's just what you're getting with Mariota. He's definitely not living up to his expectations, I don't think, as far as his career is concerned. But that's my take on that. Next, we had the Patriots taking on the Bills. Patriots won this game 16-10, moved to 4-0 in the division, 4-0 for the season. Buffalo drops to 3-1. What? This was just, Josh Allen being Josh Allen from week one. He threw 3 costly interceptions. He actually got hit with a pretty bad play, a helmet-to-helmet hit that actually concussed him and took him out of the game. Brought in Matt Barkley, and Buffalo just couldn't sustain anything. They couldn't get any good drives to go. However, their defense is serious. They played lights out. Tom Brady didn't look like the Tom Brady that we've been accustomed to seeing. He only threw for 150 yards, a pick. He didn't have a touchdown in this game. It's just that their defense can carry him, but I don't know. I think we're kind of seeing a little bit of a drop off in the offense. I think this is it's been a long time, but this is a very defensively driven team right now. That's definitely the strength of that team, and it's a darn good defense at that. But, Buffalo, you got to tip their hat off to them for being able to hang tight with them despite all those turnovers. I mean, only losing the game. They had a chance there at the end, just threw a costly pick there at the end, and New England just sat on it. But when you go and turn the ball over 3 times against Tom Brady, not only does he not make you pay for it, like he typically does, but he really didn't do anything. He, like I said, he didn't even have a touchdown, which is uncharacteristic of him. I'm not going to go and make this as the Kansas City game and say that the sky is falling, New England's bad. I think Tom Brady will bounce back and he'll prove all these people wrong, because I'm sure that's the headline today is just, is Brady falling off? Because people just want to see that man just fall off, but I just don't. Until it happens, I'm not going to say it will happen. I'm not going to say it's happening until it does happen, until it's clear that it happened. And I just, overall, I mean, there's no good losses in the NFL, but for them to play as bad offensively as they did, and their defense to hang as tight as they did with them, and make it a one possession game, that's just incredible. That defense is serious, and it was a big test for them, and I think they passed. As far as defensively goes, they played really, really well. Now moving on to what was probably one, and I say one because we had quite a few good games this weekend, was the Chiefs and the Lions. The Chiefs came back into this game. They were down with a little bit of time left, and Mahomes did what Mahomes does. He just drove down the length of the field and scored a touchdown there at the end with 23 seconds left. And he didn't play particularly well. They ended up beating the Lions 34-30. That moves the Chiefs to 4-0. The Lions to 2-1-1. Tip your hat off to the Lions. They came to play. They played well. I think Stafford had 3 touchdowns, but they forced, I believe, 3 fumbles by Mahomes had 3 fumbles in that game. And they're all just when they were ensuing and driving, they got those turnovers when they didn't, in a terrible position. But and then the Lions did the same thing. They turned the ball over when they shouldn't have, and it was kind of a sloppy game. But the whole back and forth dynamic of it, where you thought, okay, Kansas City's eventually going to pull away in this game, eventually, and they never did. It just was a close, hard-fought game, back and forth, like I said. And for the second time in his career, Patrick Mahomes was held without a touchdown. So definitely tip your cap off to Detroit for how well they played defensively. this, like Buffalo, was another true test. Like, how does this team perform against a great offensive team? And this is going to be a formula for beating Kansas City, I think. And, people are going to look at this and say, oh, okay, well, this is how you slow them down, because they didn't look in any good rhythm whatsoever in that game. I mean, Detroit just came to play, like I said. And then on the same hand, though, I will add, as bad as Kansas City performed, it just shows you how good they are, that they can still go on the road and still pull off a victory. So that's just resiliency from that team. It was a great win for them, but it's definitely something that they need to clean up, and they did not play sharp whatsoever. And basically my whole takeaway from the whole Sunday of games is a lot of the teams that were undefeated kind of regressed a lot Sunday, and I mean, it just speaks to the competitive level of the game, I hope, or maybe it's just a bad game. I mean, we don't really know until we really get into it. The season's only a quarter of a way through, so. But just based on what we saw yesterday, I mean, it was some good, some teams that, are they for real? Can they compete? What are they going to do against this team now? And, they really showed their true colors, a lot of these teams in these games. And, like I said, it was a great weekend of football. Moving on, got the Raiders at the Colts. Raiders ended up pulling this one out 31-24. It brings both those teams to 2-2 for the year. The Raiders led 21-10 at halftime. Just really surprised. They played a really good game. Just a fallback performance from what we expect out of Indianapolis, especially on the road. I always got to give praise to a team that travels that far and plays a team that usually plays very, very well at home and beats them. I just find that very impressive, because historically you can look at the numbers. The numbers don't fare very well for any team that travels halfway across the country. I mean, we're not talking, they came from Chicago and went to Buffalo. I mean, they're going all the way from California to, the Midwest. And I mean, that's a hike for sure. And Derek Carr played a great game. He scored on 3 out of 4 opening possessions that he had, and the Colts had a chance there at the end to tie it up, and they Eric Harris for the Raiders had a 30-yard pick six. I believe the game at that point was 10-17, or 17-24, I believe, and then that's what it was. I believe it was 17-24, and then they threw that pick six, which made it 31-17, and then the Colts kind of got a junk touchdown at the end of the game. But really great game for Oakland. They needed it. They just needed to see what that they could do something like that, and it just like I said, I that's just the takeaway I get from this weekend, is just the level of competitiveness between these teams, because there's a lot of these teams that I just thought were just done, write them off, and this team is far superior to this team. I'll take a break in here real quick and also point out that as many of you that have followed this show and have followed it since I've started doing this, I feel like I do have a vast knowledge of the game and a pretty good understanding of a lot of these teams and what they do well, what they don't do well. So I go into these games and I pick them. I pick them how I think they're going to go and how I see it. And I've been proven wrong quite a bit. And with that being said, I think I might maybe do kind of a quarterly thing where I'll put all my failed attempts at trying to be halfway decent at picking games. Let's just say, spoiler alert, I'm not Vegas bound by any means. I know I've got a losing record. I have to. It's just been one of those kind of years. And I just credit that to just some good competitive ball, But anyways, I'm done talking about myself. Let's move on to the important matter here, and that's covering these football games. Going into the Chargers at the Dolphins. Chargers were able to win this one pretty convincingly, as I'm sure many of you known had a good idea was gonna happen. They won 30-10, moves them to 2-2, and the Dolphins back into misery land again at 0-4. It was actually the first win for the Chargers in Miami in 38 years. So that also means that it's the first time that Phillip Rivers has ever won in Miami. Something I did not know. I didn't know that it was that tough to play there for LA. I just about did what the guy I read, the announcer. I can't tell you, or it wasn't the announcer. I take that back. It was the referee. I believe it was Terry McCullen. Was the referee of that game. He mentioned L.A. as San Diego twice. It's a hard transition, especially when I grew up, watching football for 25 plus years, and they were always known to me as the San Diego Chargers, but they're the L.A. Chargers. It's the slip-ups like that are bound to happen. They shouldn't happen at a professional level like that with a referee, but it happens. However, the Dolphins did actually manage to get their first lead of the game. They led, I believe it was 7-3. But most of the hopes for the Dolphins this season, it was cut dry pretty quick. They only managed to hold the lead for almost 4 minutes. It was like 3 minutes and 49 seconds, I think. And it was just LA from then on out. Eckler had a pretty huge day. He had a receiving touchdown. He had a rushing touchdown. Phillip Rivers played well. He was 310 with 2 touchdowns, no picks. Melvin Gordon did not play in this game. He was listed as active for this game, but he did not play. But he came out and said that he was happy to see his team perform well and win. He would have been upset if he was sitting on the bench and they were losing. But with that being said, he said it was a good team win, and he said he plans to play next week. So look for him to possibly come out and play in Week 5. But he's going to have some shared carries with the way Austin Eckler's been playing here these past few games, because he's been really lighting it up for that team, and hats off to him for playing really well. Moving on from that, we have the Redskins at the Giants. Redskins, dropped to 0-4. The Giants were able to pull this off. Giants are at 2-2. They won 24-3. Very convincingly. Not much to say about this game. I mean, the Giants just dominated. Jay Gruden, I don't know how much longer, but you just watch that bottom ticker on ESPN, and he's bound to be fired soon, I think, because they just need something different. It was a complete mistake on his part to even consider putting Haskins in the second quarter, and I'd like to see Haskins do well. I think based on the fact that he only played 1 year in college, he needs to have that year to just sit down and kind of watch how an NFL offense is ran before he just gets right in there. He's not going to have success. I'm sorry. I like the kid. He's obviously broke several Big Ten records in college, was up for the Heisman, but he's not ready for this game yet. He has the tools, though, to where if he's in the right system and he can be, protected by the offensive line, which that's exactly what, Washington needs is an offensive line. I don't know what's worse between that offensive line and their defense, but I'd have to put it on the offensive line. It's just atrocious. He obviously did not perform well at all. He went 9 for 17, had a little bit over 100 yards, I think like 107 yards, and threw 3 picks. So, hope it doesn't shake his confidence too much. Like I said, he's a talented kid, and you just want to see him do well and succeed. but he's not going to succeed under those circumstances at all, I don't think. And it's unfortunate. You can't help who drafts you. I mean, you can pull the John Elway or the Eli Manning and just say you're not playing for him, but I mean, that wasn't the case, obviously, with Haskins, and you just hopefully they don't do this again. That's not what that team needs right now. They need a complete rebuild, and he's the start of it. But don't stick him into this. This is ugly. The Giants, it's a divisional game. They're going to come at you, and they're going to come at you hard, like most teams in the league are, but especially in divisional games, because they need them if they want to be, in the conversation later on in the year. And they've really surprised me a lot with what they've been able to do. But they're sitting at 2-2 right now, and they might get Saquon back in a couple weeks, but his replacement didn't do bad. He had a rushing Wayne Gallman. He had a rushing touchdown, receiving touchdown. So that's all I can say about that. Is just Washington, don't do that again. I don't know what you were thinking. That's not the thing to do. That's not going to fire up the team. And I think anybody that's a Washington fan, I don't see why they would, knowing the background of Dwayne Haskins, would want him to come in and just start right now. I think they kind of know what they're getting out of their team, and quite frankly, it's just not it's the Miami Dolphins of the NFC. They're just not that good, and sticking a rookie quarterback in under the situation is just going to kill them, and that's not what they need. This is an investment for the future, and it's not what you want to do to it. You want to treat it good and not stick it in the hornet's nest right now. He's not ready for it. But moving on from that, we got the Panthers and the Texans. Panthers were able to pull this one off, surprisingly. 16-10. Both teams are now 2-2. Great game by Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he went off in this game. He had 27 carries for 93 yards and a touchdown. He also had 10 receptions for 86 yards. Kyle Allen had 3 fumbles, but for whatever reason, the Texans had several short field opportunities. They couldn't capitalize on them. Deshaun Watson had 160 yards passing. You got to do better than that. And he had a rushing touchdown, but that was a stat line for him. I mean, Carolina just controlled this game. There was, like I said, they kept making mistakes and kept Houston very much in this game. But at the end of the day, Houston didn't have any answers and couldn't get the ball moving at all. And Bill O'Brien came out and was just completely disgusted. He said, "I can't even tell you what went wrong. I have to watch the tape and kind of figure it out from there." So, yeah, that's all I can really take away. I mean, that's some resiliency to come through 3 fumbles with a young quarterback and still bounce back. But when you have a weapon like McCaffrey and you get him involved, 37 touches, he's going to make something happen. He's just that good. Moving on for that, one of the biggest surprises of the weekend, I think everybody can agree with this, is the Buccaneers and the Rams. Buccaneers ended up putting 55 points on this Rams defense, which blows my mind. They win 55-40, moves them to 2-2, and drops another undefeated team 3-1 with the Rams. Winston was he was okay. I would say he's better than okay. I hate doing that, but I have my feeling on him, and I've expressed it pretty clearly, and you guys know all too well about it. But 385 yards, 4 touchdowns, a pick. That's a good stat line. And Goff, he just looked kind of out of it. 45 for 68, 517. Yeah, you threw it all over the place, but you threw it 68 times. I think they only ran the ball about 11 times that game, which they were down pretty early in that game. For the most part, actually Tampa led the game at one point, 38-20. And you gotta tip your hat off to LA for coming back and actually made it an 8-point game at one point. But I spoke earlier on Ndamukong Suh. Well, he made a huge play. I don't know if I said it before, but Goff had 3 interceptions and he had a fumble. And that fumble was recovered by Ndamukong Suh for 37 yards and a touchdown with 1:06 left when they were only down by 8. So, I mean, it's just a great win for Tampa. And you gotta look at yourself and the Rams and say this was I don't know if they considered it a trap game, but they definitely played like it. I mean, for Tampa to go all the way out there at L.A. with that crowd and just not, just be able to pull that win off, it's an impressive victory for them. It doesn't really change my feeling on them. I just think, the Rams just got punched in the mouth and, they weren't able to respond. It's definitely a good wake-up call for them, and I see them playing better. But, you got to tip your cap off to Tampa Bay for how well they played. But moving on, got the Seahawks and the Cardinals. Seahawks were able to pull this game off pretty convincingly, 27-10. That moves them to 3-1 in the division, so they're tied up there with LA, and San Francisco sat idle this weekend, so they're technically the number 1 in that division, sitting at 3-0. But like I said, Seattle just kind of ran away with this game. They led at halftime 20-3 and just sat on it. The touchdown that Arizona got came late in the game. It's kind of a junk touchdown. Wilson on the day was 22 for 28, 240. He had a touchdown. And like I said, Kyler Murray went 22 for 32, 241, and a pick, which ended up being a pick 6 by Jadeveon Clowney. Seattle just played a mistake-free game, had balance, ran the ball. Chris Carson ran for 104 yards. I did like how Arizona was able to use David Johnson. He had about 19 touches, 11 carries for 40 yards, and 8 receptions for 99. So, it is a bright spot to see that they are using him, and they need to use him more. But Seattle was just too much for him today. But moving on from that, we have the Vikings at the Bears. One thing I will say, it has nothing to do with the game itself. I just have to point this out there for cosmetic reasons. Chicago, don't ever wear those uniforms again. Those things were ridiculous. I did not understand what they were going with. Those jerseys looked hideous. So, yeah, that's up there with those Acme Packer uniforms. It just looks like crap to me. I'm not a huge fan of it. I mentioned earlier in this game, Chicago was able to win. This was a very defensive game, as many of you would think it would be. Bears won 16-6, moved to 3-1, and Vikings dropped to 2-2. But yeah, the Bears led 16-0 at halftime, and just that defense was. Khalil Mack was everywhere. He was getting double teamed and still coming in, applying pressure, getting sacks. And he was he was a force to be reckoned with. Heck of a good player. Dalvin Cook was held to 35 yards this game. I think that's a big factor in this game and why Minnesota wasn't able to win this game, because they just showed if you can shut him down, you basically turned Kirk Cousins into the hero, and he's not that by any means. So good defensive battle and good win for Chicago, able to pull that off. But moving on from that, we have the Jaguars and the Broncos. Old Uncle Rico did it again. It's as I said, Jaguars won this game 26-24. Put them at 2-2 for the season. Denver drops down to 0-4. It's just unfortunate. This is the second game this season they've lost by a last-second field goal. So, I mean, you can look at this team as 0-4, but they're the closest 0-4 team right now to 2-2 that there is in the league. It's just unfortunate, but they haven't played their best ball by any means, and they haven't played good ball by any means. But it just shows you how, a couple plays here and there can change the entire outcome of a game, a season, a team. This was actually the first time that the Broncos had blown a 14-point lead because they had them on the ropes. Blew a 14-point lead. First time they've done it at home since 2006. So, I mean, that says something right there. I mean, I don't know what you want to credit that to, whether it be that they're not the same Broncos that everybody's familiar with and thinks of when they think of Denver, or it's just bad luck. I kind of think it's a little bit of both. But, it all comes down to the defense finally got the much-needed sack that they needed. They got 5, actually, in this game. Von Miller got his 99th and 100th career sack in this game. But they allowed Leonard Fournette 225 yards, a career high for him, as a matter of fact. And, yeah, you got to, this is just something that we wouldn't, at least I didn't see it happen defensively. With this team, I thought that they would be sound, and it just shows you that that's things can change just like that in this league. And the last thing I expected was the Broncos to have to take to their 4th game to get 1 sack, and on top of that allow over 200 yards of rushing to one player. But that's just kind of been how this season's worked out for them. And like I said, I think Locke will start sometime this season just based on how this is going. If it's projected and it just keeps going the way it's going, I don't know what the remaining schedule looks like for them, like the next 3 or 4 games. But if it's anything like what they've had so far, look for him to start, which I don't think is terribly bad. He's not even in the same conversation as like a Dwayne Haskins, because at least their defense has shown at times that it can be dominant. And that's something good for a good rookie quarterback. If you have that, you're liable to make mistakes, but if you have a good defense that can back you up, for the most part they have a good defense, I should say, but then you can still kind of build some growth from that and have a good kind of positive impact on the season. But that's my take from that. I mean, you just tip your hat off to Minshew. I mean, Minshew Mania is running high down there in Jacksonville. They love that guy, and rightfully so. I mean, he's been playing well. But moving on to the Sunday night game, which was another one of those, depending on how you guys like football. Me personally, I'm more of a defensive guy. I'd rather see a defensive, clash than to see, 2 quarterbacks throw it 120 times. Between the 2 of them, that's more like arena football to me. I like defense, and that's exactly what this game was. The Saints were able to pull it off 12-10 and dethrone the undefeated Cowboys. Both those teams are sitting at 3-1 now, and I still stand really confident with the Cowboys. I really like a lot of what they do. I just think that going into that environment and playing that team is so sneaky good defensively, and I don't even think it's a secret anymore. I think everybody's well aware that their defense is been the best I've seen it in a long time, because even in the years where it was pretty good, they were more opportunistic and just kind of a very turnover-savvy defense, maybe not so much a stabilizing force, if you will. That's exactly what they were in this game, though. Whenever Dallas had a kind of a breath of hope to come back and make something interesting out of this game, they just shut it down. They had a relentless pass rush, and they had Amari Cooper locked down pretty good. Marshawn Lattimore had him. I believe they only held him to 2 catches. I think he was targeted about 4 or 5 times. There was a few drops in this game and some uncharacteristic fumbling. Jason Witten normally isn't one to fumble. He fumbled in this game. Zeke fumbled. It's kind of controversial how that fumble happened, and it happened to come in a terrible time for Dallas because it was on a 4th and short, and he had the yardage, but they just didn't have enough video evidence to dispute that the fumble was not a fumble. I say it wasn't. It looked like his elbow was clearly down, and he was down, but that's just the way the game goes. I mean, despite that, you know, this team is talented enough offensively where they should be able to score more than 10 points. But like I said, you got to tip your cap off to the Saints. They played great. They held Zeke to 35 yards. I mean, that's impressive in its own, because this man can just run over everybody, it seems, and with that offensive line too, especially. But and Dak, he came out and he had a missed throw that was that was canceled out by an interference call, and so he still remains perfect in the third quarter. So I guess if they just tell that Dallas that it's the third quarter every quarter, then they'll be all right. But yeah, I'm not down on the Cowboys for this. They just hit a buzzsaw of a team, with so much energy. That crowd was rocking all night, and Teddy Bridgewater played good. He made the right plays when he needed to, and he didn't put him in any bad situations. And this actually is the first home win in the Sean Payton era where they don't score a touchdown. So, I mean, that's impressive too. I mean, it just speaks to how good the defense is if they can hold Dallas to not only 10 points, but a mediocre day offensively. Mediocre is actually being kind of kind to them, because they really were out of sorts. They couldn't get any good rhythm going for a good chunk of the game. So they scored that touchdown on a 1-yard Ezekiel Elliott run in the third quarter, and then had a 3-0 lead, and then it's basically all Saints after that, outside of that touchdown. But when they needed to make the big plays defensively, they did, and like I said, they had a relentless pass rush. And then you look on Dallas' side. I'm saying a lot of bad things about them right now, but their defense was playing really well too. I mean, they had some good pressure on Bridgewater. There was a play where they pretty much could have iced it and ended all chance for Dallas. It was on a 3rd down, and Bridgewater was getting pressure like immediately right at the snap, and he made a mistake and just ran backwards and just got blasted, and basically took him out of field goal range to where they had to punt and make Dallas, give Dallas, I should say, the opportunity to come back and win it there in the end, but wasn't enough time, didn't have the timeouts, and that's football. That's how it goes, But great win for the Saints, and I was really impressed, and I'm impressed so far. I've been eating crow with Teddy Bridgewater. I've never thought this guy was a bum by any means. It's just the quality of teams that he was going to face, given how he hasn't played in so long, and knowing that his nerves would be factored into that, I just couldn't help but go against. My gut told me that he was going to struggle against these teams. But, everybody's saying that the Saints are looking for them to go 3-3 in this span until they get Breeze back, which likely still seems like the timetable for him. And they're sitting at 2-0 right now in these first 6 games. So hats off to them. They're just doing great. They're playing really well, and especially with that defense. And they're going to be a scary team to play, especially when Drew Brees gets back. Lastly, I'll cover another big shocking upset, if you will, which took place in the AFC North between the Browns and the Ravens. Browns win 40-25. That score is very misleading because there was a junk touchdown at the end. Cleveland had this game. They dominated this game, and they played one of the most complete games that they have played all season, and they looked scary good how well they played. Both teams moved to 2-2, obviously with Baltimore losing. They've lost 2 in a row. Baker played great. He was 20 for 30 with 342 yards, a touchdown and a pick. But the story of the day definitely comes at the hands of Nick Chubb. He was on fire. He had 20 carries, 165 yards, 3 touchdowns. It's just an absolute fantasy nightmare if you had to play against him. If you had him, you were in great shape, but he had a heck of a day. Lamar Jackson was 24 for 34, 247, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. He had 66 yards rushing. Early on into the game, that seemed to be how the game was playing out. Cleveland didn't really start pulling away there towards like the second half. But I remember at one point in the game, Cleveland had I take that back. Baltimore had 10 yards of passing to Cleveland's like 150, and this is like early in the second quarter. So it was like Baltimore just they looked early on. They looked like they could throw the ball and have a good balance. But here lately, once they've played these gooders, oh my goodness. Yeah, let's disregard that I said that. I'm not in second grade anymore. But they play some better teams, and the competition is greater, and this is what you're getting out of them. So maybe they're not quite the team that we thought they were going to be, and Cleveland looked like the team we thought they were going to be today. Now, like I said, let's see this on a more consistent level. Let's see them play this hard, this well. Got to give it to them, too. It was on the road. But, yeah, they played what we think is a good Baltimore team and just throttled them. At one point in the game, I believe it was 40 to 18. So, I mean, like I said, that junk touchdown at the end made it look a lot closer than what it really was. But Cleveland had 4 sacks defensively to Baltimore's 1. Baltimore had their first turnover of the season and happened to come in the form of 2 interceptions and a fumble. But yeah, they were the only team this season that hadn't turned the ball over, and they turned it over 3 times. So, Browns fans, you have something to be excited about. Like I've said before, they've had spurts of moments where they look like the team that we thought, but they never could sustain it in a full game. And they had 60 minutes of it in this game right here, and they played very, very well. Let's not take away from the fact that they're also playing a hated divisional rival, which they have bad blood. It definitely showed in that game. I recall a big fight breaking out a couple times, and one in particular, 2 players on the offense and 2 players on the defense were assessed personal foul calls, and they obviously offset each other. But there's a big fight with Odell Beckham. Some punches were thrown. He was thrown to the ground and choked. Freddie Kitchens came out and said that he thought that player should be ejected. There's no reason why you should come out or put your hands on somebody's throat. It's extremely dangerous and not get ejected out of the game. According to the corner, he came out and said that he saw Odell at the end of the game and he apologized to him. And they asked if Odell apologized to him, and he said, "No, I don't remember if he did or not. I don't think he did." He's like, "But I think he forgives me." And so hopefully that's all squashed. That's a part of football you really don't want to see, but it's bound to happen in this game. It's a survival of the fittest. Strong man wins, and that kind of brings out some of the intense battles between some of these divisional teams. But my takeaway from this game, obviously, Baltimore's not looking as impressive and as balanced offensively as what we thought they were early on in the season. They're playing better teams, and they're getting outplayed. And Cleveland, you just upped yourself a little bit in this game as well. Playing to this expectation level that was set early in the season was such a high. It was, such high expectations. It's even hard to imagine living up to them. And not to poke fun or anything, especially off of a team that hasn't really had any success in the last 20 years. So, with that being said, they did. They showed up yesterday, and they performed really well, and they definitely gave Browns fans something to be excited about, especially if they can bring it on a consistent basis. But that wraps up today's episode. Like I said, tune in and check out the preview. It's already up and posted. It's on YouTube currently, so check it out. Then follow it up with this one, and then, like I said, thanks again, guys, for listening. Let me know what you think about everything. I know I try to stress that. I don't want to stress it too much, but I really enjoyed doing this for you guys, and I hope that you guys are getting as much out of it as I am from you, because the support has been huge, and I appreciate every bit of it. But with that being said, I'm going to close out this episode and move on to watching tonight's game and giving you guys a good preview of it tomorrow and previewing the Thursday night matchup. Thanks again, guys. Talk to you soon.